Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be sharing a bunch of tips that'll help you catch more fish on early ice. We're going to be talking with Brosdahl. He's got a bunch of good advice, and first things first, he's going to talk a little bit about the types of lakes that he likes to fish on first ice.
You know, early ice is a different animal, and you know, shallow lakes freeze faster because they've cooled off. Deep waters will create vents and the ice is unsafe. So I like to target lakes that are shallow or tucked in trees. We're down in a lake that's kind of sunken in, and it has a shallow swampy edge. So the ice is thick here. And age of ice is different from south to north. It's older, it's been there longer, so you get thicker ice. So we're in the northern part of the state, and we're fishing a small lake that doesn't have a lot of snow on it, and it froze really well, while other lakes right now aren't safe to go to. And there is a history of lakes that freeze up early. Your bait shops will know. I know because I'm getting older and I've been on a lot of lakes, and you got to check. Early ice is a lot of work. I check with a chisel, 2 good chops in a hole, and it can support the bro. If I do 1 chop, I turn around, and no reason to go out 4 inches of ice, or what the Department of Natural Resources calls safe, but not just, you know, frozen slush, hard black ice. And so I pick lakes where we can get action, catch panfish. Some lakes have walleyes and have shallow water available. Plus, you can catch and release on those lakes. So I don't just stop fishing them when we get a lot of ice. I like lakes that I could throw fish back. They don't get barrel trauma. And if you're fishing crappies and bluegills in over 20 to 22 feet, there's a good chance that most of your fish are dead when you throw them back. And right now, a lot of our fish are 14 feet down on the edge of 16 to 18 feet. Mud, and they're feeding on insects. Some of the insects are really big water bugs. They're not eating those, but they're targeting bloodworms, plankton, and that's the unique thing about crappies and bluegills. They have really thick gill rakers. They can sift out micro insects out of the water column. White crappies can't do that because their gill rakers are sparse, so they have to eat more minnows and shad. That's why in areas where there's a lot of minnows, you'll catch more white crappies. Up here, black crappies and bluegills and perch, even though they have finer gill rakers also, they could still eat bloodworms, but zooplankton, crappies haven't made. If there's not a lot of minnows in the lake, they can go find the bugs that we can't see with our naked eye.
Now Brian is going to talk a little bit about what's happening underneath the ice as far as the ecosystem goes and the forage movement and all of that on early ice specifically versus what it's going to look like later in the year.
So early ice, fish are active and they're going to be targeting bigger baits. You can use mud bug, gill getter with a waxworm. I watch my buddies are catching fish, and as winter progresses, it's going to be more, you know, that zooplankton kind of stuff, and that exists in most of the lake. As oxygen shrinks, the fish will move offshore, and then as spring comes in, the lake starts melting, and all that flush goes back into the lake of fresh water. The fish can return to the shallows, and any standing weeds, even if they're dead, become usable again, and that's why late ice, you go shallow. When those big crappies and bluegills and perch move in, it is an absolute blast. But they're fun getting them early ice. They're going to be on the edge of the basin. Hard to soft bottom areas are super important because that's where everything is right now. As the minnows dump down, the fish follow too. But crappies, you know, hardly ever in the wintertime eat minnows, and bluegills themselves. But in the spring, when they're on the spawning beds and a little bit before, bluegills and crappies will eat the smallest minnows in a lake. And so, you know, they become super apex predators in the weeds. And you know, bluegills and crappies will eat young of the year perch, even last year's perch. That's why you catch them on crankbaits that time of year. They're super aggressive. And as summer progresses, they're focusing on hatches like mayflies, midge flies, which are your bloodworms. And there's over 2,200 different types of chironomids, and that's your bloodworm. So without those as their forage, we'd have really small panfish. But we do really well. Now throw freshwater shrimp in. Some areas have more shrimp than others. You find those lakes, you got super fast growth serum for fish, and even small crayfish. Lakes that are prolific with rusty crayfish, the panfish eat them. Not when they're big, but when they're small. And that's like better than a little freshwater shrimp and great for growth rates.
So on this particular day, we were actually out chasing panfish on a smaller lake, one of those smaller lakes that freeze up a little bit earlier. And Brian is now gonna talk a little bit about how we got into those fish and just some good general advice for fishing on early ice.
I love it. Love it. Catching fish, watching them on Mega Live. Not a giant, but fun. Early ice, it's about catching, getting bit, and love catching crappies. The snow coming down, wet snow, the change in pressure really triggered them. And I like this on the Humminbird, shortening the shaft. You don't get tangled up, let them go. The real trick is, in dark water, if you jig too high, it disappears from their view. So move slow, small movements. Set the jig in the hole and jig it there. And you get kind of an idea what kind of action you want. When you're moving the tail and you're barely moving that rod tip, you've got the right action. Insects don't have rockets on their feet. Insects dart and move and swim in slow movements. So right there, that action, I'm going to recreate, but down farther. And I see there's fish moving in. This is a great spot. I love it. I'll get down in the zone, and if you're walleye fishing, rip it. If you're pike fishing, when you're fishing panfish, just slow swimmy movements create violent strikes.
The key with early ice fishing is making sure that not only are you packing light, but you also have all of the essentials, and you need a little bit more extra safety gear and stuff like that. So Brian is gonna run through what he brings out on early ice when he's walking out to his favorite spots.
Let this little one go here. Thanks for the fight. Early ice, typically I'll just haul a sled with maybe a bucket and some gear. Of course, I have my Mega Live, and I have it cut down because you don't want to stick it way in the water and have fish wrap on it. But there it is right there, and I have it set in down mode. But I'll usually have a otter tub, but now I've got the one-man otter cottage, because if this snow kicks in again with some wind, I'm going inside. Hey, everybody, you can endure the cold. Why not endure the comfort? And so I'll be in there. I got a little heater. I've got a sandwich with. I've got a coffee. But early ice, always have safety equipment. Here's just a throwable from your boat. Tie it really good on one end. Make sure the knot's good, and have a loop at the end. Throw it to somebody from a safe distance. Of course, we've got our spikes to climb out if we do fall in, and spud bars and drills. And I like a lighter auger. I've got my razor auger here, and I've got it on a DeWalt. I have other drills also, but I like how that handle attaches to it, so it's not going to fall off like you hear happens. And then of course otter rod locker, because I don't want to have my rod tips busted off. That bad habit of rods bouncing around in a bucket, it's got to end. And then early ice, pick your battles. Now these days you can just go on a computer and look at the shape of lakes and try to find contours that meet shoreline, so you don't have to do this long march. If you like walking, go up to Red, go to Winnie, go to Leech, early ice. You can walk. But if you want short distances, pick lakes that fish friendly early ice. Old sloughs, we call them flowages in Minnesota, that have like no current, especially in the years where we haven't had a lot of rain. They become solid, locked up with ice when everything is still open. And we're fishing on between 4 and 5 inches here, and we're safe, and there's no reason to go mess around. But as we get older ice, thicker ice, then I'll be hitting some walleye destinations. And when I could take the machine, then that's my mule. I've got a snowmobile with an otter box on it, that monster box. I could store my electronics, everything in safely. Got a place to hook up my sled and go. and you can cover some distances. You know, having an electric bike works great. A wheelcraft, love them. You can use them on really ice that you can't hardly even walk on because it's a boat on wheels. So there's ways to go, but the cheapest way to go is hoof it and look at the map, pick your spot.
Every time we go out on the ice, we're trying to maximize the amount of fish that we catch, and there's two general schools of thought when it comes to that. Number one is running and gunning, looking for fish, trying to find the most active fish in the lake. And number two is just kind of sitting up in the deer stand waiting for the fish to come to you. And Brian is going to talk about how he likes to think about those two strategies, specifically when it comes to early ice.
You know, early ice is a different animal. You know, I like to run and gun when I'm walleye fishing. You drill a string of holes, you work your way down with a glass buckshot. Right now, I don't want to move around too much. We got a snow and we've drilled this area out. We know that the ice is consistently over 4 inches. If you're on a lake, you really can't run and gun. You'll run out of where you consider safe. So find a good spot, like here where we got a school of fish and they're swimming through and we're picking them off. I love it when you can catch fish like this live as we're going here. And early ice is better. The fish are schooled up. They're not stratified like they will later in winter when they're looking for oxygen and everything starts dumping down deeper and deeper and they become suspended. The fish stratify right now. There's bigger schools, so we're gonna actually catch more fish without moving. And I like, if I don't have to move, I'll stay put.
Next up, Brian is going to give a quick little tour of his smaller pull-behind otter sled that flips over and keeps him warm when it's windy and blowing. And it's a cool little setup, and he's going to walk through it right now.
Oh, I love it. You know, one of the early ice features that I like to have, I like to have a little one-man house. It's so nice, and I like this otter cottage. Reason being, if someone gets cold, they can come in here and sit. But little heater setup, warm, you can change lures. I tied and changed the lure, and actually I'm going to finish spooling a reel because I'm going to put some real light line on. We catch fish in comfort. Now, came out here, it was warm, we had a snow squall, and the temperature's plummeting. And I'm comfortable, I'm warm, and it's very enjoyable. And ice fishing is about controlling your comfort level. There you go, buddy. Go back. Down the hole. Fun. I could sit here and catch a release fish all day long. Love it. I'm keeping my voice down because we get some people coming in here, but I love how this house is laid out. Your house is, you know, you've heard it said, and I've even said it 20 years ago, your house is your tackle box. You have everything in here that you could ever want. Your tackle, I've even got minnows. If I see a big predator coming by, I can put a minnow head on a glass buckshot. Everything you can imagine. Nothing wrong with comfort, and I can flip it and I can go. And this thing's so light to pull, but even in this wind, it's holding up. I don't even need my bars. I just love it. Kick those over, and I've got side door entry on both sides. But it's all about convenience, comfort, traveling light, and making it easy to move around. And that's the important thing. I got to catch another fish. I just keep switching colors because it's warm in here. It's like having a good lab control from the environment out there. And as the wind picks up, I'm sure somebody will be fishing in here with me.
Well, that's about all we got for you in this video. Special thanks to Brian for sharing a bunch of good tips. Hopefully you can take a few of them out to your favorite lake on early ice and catch a few more fish. And if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, make sure to hit that little red subscribe button down below because we have a lot more content coming in the future. And until then, we will see you in the next one.